Welcome to the big interview brought to you by Beyond the Ballot Box on CFRU 93.3 FM here in Guelph. My name is Oliver Oxide. I'm going to be doing a solo effort today, and we're going to be talking about something that, well, we at CFRU like to think that we cover underreported stories, and I think this is certainly one of them. The issue of human trafficking in the world, and we are very lucky to have someone who's a bit of an expert on this join us. Her name is Lori Folkerson, and she lives in Milton, and she's been working with this for a very long time, and so we'd like to say hello, Lori. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And yourself?
I'm well, thank you. Just for the listeners, just give us a little bit of a background. I know that you have a criminology degree from Carleton, but apart from that, just kind of give us your CV, as it were, on how you kind of came about to this issue.
Okay, well, essentially a couple of years ago, I was doing an internship in Ottawa. A friend of mine works for Member of Parliament Joy Smith, and I was looking to volunteer somewhere. He invited me out to his office, and that's essentially when I got my first look into human trafficking. And so Member of Parliament Joy Smith is she's a backbencher MP for the Conservative government, but a forerunner in stopping and fighting human trafficking in Canada. And so in this office is when I had an opportunity to read articles and to learn more about this crime, and just had this, overwhelming passion to do something about it. So I came back down to the GTA, which is where I'm from, and I started to go to churches and community groups and talking about this issue, about Bill 268, which was originally the bill that was being passed or being brought through legislation at that time. And through me just talking about this and spreading awareness, I started to meet more and more people who also had this passion. And from then, I ended up joining a group called freethem. And that's who I'm kind of speaking on behalf of today.
Okay, and what does freethem do?
freethem, we are a nonprofit initiative, essentially. There's a group of 15 of us or so, 2 different committees, that work together to partner with other organizations and charities to essentially end human trafficking. And so our goals is, first and foremost, through awareness and education. 80% of what freethem does is events and fundraising and presentations, speaking engagements, really just bringing the public to become more aware of human trafficking and that it is, in fact, happening in Canada, as well as then, I mentioned fundraising. We raise money for a group out of the GTA that runs safe houses for trafficked victims. And so freethem's big thing is to be out there, to be telling people about human trafficking, to get the public involved with what's happening on Parliament Hill, essentially, and then to raise money to help those who have been victimized by this crime.
Now, human trafficking is kind of a new term to some people, but this is really an equivalent to slavery, is it not? Is that really what we're talking about?
Yes.
I can't believe that in, this millennia we're still dealing with this kind of issue. Now, we're going to talk about other parts of the world later on, but let's begin with Canada. And, for us being a first world country and us thinking that we're one of the richest countries in the world, and then you say that people are being human trafficked in Canada. That to me is just shocking, and I think it would be shocking to a lot of people. Describe how the Canadian situation is right now.
Okay, so Canada itself is a source, destination, and transit country when it comes to trafficking, in the sense that there's a definite amount of domestic trafficking happening where the girls or boys, women and children are being kidnapped from Canada and taken to other various parts of Canada. Destination meaning they're coming from other countries and then they're working here. So this is where we have a lot of people coming to work as a nanny, we did for a while have people coming here to be exotic dancers. We have taken that from the immigration legislation now. And then as well as the transit country, so coming from other countries through Canada into the States. Now, I mentioned that we are a source. Domestic trafficking is actually rather large, and a lot of people kind of think human trafficking and think, Europe or third world countries, and it's definitely happening there, but we're also finding a huge issue with domestic in the sense that some of these girls, and like students, young girls, high school students, are living at home while still being trafficked.
Interesting. Explain that concept, because that seems counterintuitive.
I know, it's interesting. It kind of, when we go back to and we look at the Amanda Todd situation,
Yep.
where a guy got a hold of a nude picture of her and then essentially kind of used it to threaten her, to bully her, and to almost kind of get her to do things that she wouldn't normally do, or to encourage other people to get her to do things that she wouldn't normally do. And so what we have is we call it the game. And so traffickers, what they do is they'll go to places like anywhere where kids go to hang out, so shopping centers, going to the movies, going to parks, skate parks, wherever kids hang out, and they pose as the boyfriend. And they start buying this person, this girl, everything she wants, taking her places, doing all these great things for her, and then, professing their love. And then when it comes to a point, they're like, oh, hon, I need you to do something for me, whatever the deal is, and they get them doing something that they would normally not do. So whether it's a sexual act, whether it's a nude photo, whatever it is, and they videotape it, they get it on camera, and they say, if you don't do this, I'm going to show your parents. If you don't do this, I'm going to post it on Facebook. And so then it's a type of blackmail. So then we have these girls who are living essentially like they're living at home, and they may be going to school, and they may be going to their jobs, but that night they're still turning tricks for their pimps because they're terrified of what may happen if people found out the truth. And we've had a number of these cases where this has actually happened, and in the local area. And the police are definitely are aware of this and are trying to work towards it and kind of educate the youth out there to be very, very cautious and be very cautious with regards to social media and accountability around social media and the sexting, the posting of nude photos, to be very cautious and careful when you do that. More or less, don't do it.
Yeah. Isn't that very interesting? Because, I think we as a general society think we hear the term human trafficking and slavery, and we never really consider the pimp-sex worker relationship as being such. And so it's very interesting when you put it in the terms that you just did. It really is the same thing. It really is making a slave out of another human being. The one thing that, the recent events in Cleveland, for instance, as hideous as those were, I guess that would be another example of not only kidnapping, but human trafficking, I would think, no?
I don't know exactly everything that happened. I'm not sure if they've fully revealed that. Definitely confinement, definitely kidnapping. They could be charged with some trafficking. Really depends on the type of situations that went on there. Mm-hmm. But definitely what you would have saw or in that situation, and I'm going to say, because I think some people are like, well, why didn't they ever leave? They were there for 10 years. It's just the same reason why they didn't leave is why people who are being trafficked don't ever leave or don't just go and go to the police, right? It's that manipulation. It's what they call the Stockholm syndrome. Mm-hmm. It's those reasons why they stay. Like I said, I don't know exactly the full amount of the case. I think we're still learning a lot more as to what charges will be placed there, but very similar. What they went through, it's still a ton of counseling will be needed for them to be able to live normal lives again.
And just as an aside, Lori, would, let's say a cult activity, a church that maybe is confining their members, would that be part of your purview of human trafficking as well? The reason I bring it up is I recently saw a documentary about a town in Arizona called Colorado City, which is a polygamous Mormon community where people get to leave, but they're shunned. Would that come under your purview as well, or no?
Not necessarily. Okay. Because they do have that opportunity to leave.
Okay, I'm just kind of investigating the parameters of this. What has the UN done about this? Because we're going to go into a little bit more international flavor now. Has the UN put forward anything to do with human trafficking? Have they really clamped down on it? Is there anything that they've done that has real teeth to it?
The UN has done a lot. They've put out a lot of different protocols. They're very aware of what's happening in an accountability structure, so what's happening in each country. And so Canada has every year different reports come out, and Canada has to say, okay, where are they with regards to human trafficking? What type of implementations? Anything that's been kind of done in order to prevent it, and to stop it, and to fight it. And so each country. They have all these different, checklists that they have to go by. We've heard a lot of different things happening in India, and a lot of it is definitely equated to social media and people getting, videos and posting on Facebook and, big outcry. Social media has played a really awesome part in this. And India is considered to be, I believe it's like a tier 2 factor. And if they get to Tier 3, then the UN can start putting sanctions on them. And so, and I've learned this from a friend of mine who runs a safe house out of India. And so they're very, for the most part, there's a lot of different judges and different political officials who are very aware of the trafficking that's happening and wanting to, to fight it, because the more negativity or negative press that India gets with regards to this, the more a UN kind of pipes up and goes, okay, like, this shouldn't be happening. Do we need to step in? And so in that sense, the UN is really great that way. However, there's still a number of countries out there, Cambodia, Vietnam, that are huge for child prostitution, for sex tourism. And unfortunately, a lot of these countries, and these third world, definitely poverty-stricken countries, the officials are corrupt. And there's a lot of corruption going on. So it's really hard for even the union, even if they were to say, like, because they're so poor, like, we're going to put these sanctions on you, not really going to do much.
Well, what kind of sanctions are we talking about? If they do get to that Tier 3 or that Level 3 designation, when they say sanctions, what do they mean by that?
I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to go into, I guess, consult with some of my people who deal with the international end of things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, speaking about international things, when we think of human trafficking and slavery, if I can use that term, I know it's outdated, but we've heard a lot about the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia. The recent conflict in the Sudan brought to light some slavery that is still going on. Are these really the hotbeds of the human trafficking movement to bring people in?
There are so many different types of slavery out there, and so many different ways in which people are being forced to do things against their will. Human trafficking and slavery, I think, exists and happens in every single country in this world, with the exception of Greenland. It's the only country out there that does not have a reported case of human trafficking. And so, in that sense, it's where anyone can profit off of using someone else, whether it's for labor, whether it's for sexual exploitation, what have you. People, especially in poverty-stricken, war-torn countries where it's pretty much it's life or death, right? And so they will use people. They'll abuse people. To, a lot of people, well, they see them as commodity. They don't even see them as people. And so it's unfortunate, but essentially it's almost inevitable. It's such a horrible answer to that question, and I'm not really sure how to fully...
No, you're fine. The thing that surprised me about your answer is that even Scandinavian countries, who we think the most progressive countries on the planet, are still have human trafficking in them, like Sweden and Norway and Finland?
Now, they're definitely getting better, right? Like, I love that you brought that up, and it's the Nordic law, and that's what we would love to have to, bring forward in Canada. And so Sweden... they'll still have some forms of human trafficking happening, but definitely not nearly as much as they once did. And so I believe that their laws have been now changed for the past 10 years. And since they did this, which the Nordic law is essentially decriminalizing the selling of sex and criminalizing the purchasing of sex. So going after the John, going after the purchaser, and saying essentially, I believe it was like jail time, and it was like publicizing their name and fines. And so when people realize, wow, like for me to go and to purchase these sexual services, I'm going to have to I might go to jail, or I might be fined, or people are going to find out. Then the clientele, the demand, it plummeted. And so Sweden was the first to do that. The Nordic countries followed through, and so they definitely now are having lower amounts of human trafficking. But again, I wouldn't say that they're completely null and void of all trafficking cases.
Interesting. Now, this term has come up in the last 10 years, and it's something that you mentioned just when we were speaking. As soon as anybody sees the term sex tourism, shouldn't we put our warning lights on? Is that not just a tip-off to a bigger problem?
Definitely. I'm probably slightly naive in the fact that I didn't fully understand what sex tourism was.
I bet you do now.
Oh, I definitely do, and a lot of people still don't fully understand it. But yeah, and to some, and perhaps I'm just more conservative, that offends me, but to some it doesn't. But then when you say sex tourism, sleeping with children, then people kind of perk up and go, oh, okay, that's not good. And so we do have a new criminal code offense, the extraterritorial. I can never pronounce that. It's great. But essentially that if you participate in sex tourism in another country, you will be charged in Canadian courts. And we have a Canadian right now, I believe, in jail in an Asian country for participating in sex tourism, and eventually will be extradited to Canada, and he'll be charged here as well.
Oh, well, good for them. One other thing that you mentioned, and this is a phenomenon that I see is growing and growing, is whenever I'm in downtown Toronto, and I'm driving at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I see this wave of children getting out of school being accompanied by people who aren't their parents. And you mentioned the fact of domestics and au pairs coming over. Please define what a traditional au pair would be, as opposed to what you believe a human trafficked one. Is it a question of the fact that they may take their passport, they may not pay them, so on and so forth? How do you kind of define between the actual position and job and employment of that and being humanly trafficked?
I have a number of friends that I do know that do bring in nannies from other countries and such, and as long as they're being paid properly, that you're following, for the most part, Employment Standards Act. I know there's some leeway with that, and that you don't. You're right. The confiscating of the ID is a big one. But you are never allowed. It is against the law to take anyone's identification. And as soon as you do take someone's identification away from them, you are now stepping into the trafficking end of the charge. And so as long as you pay them and, they're free to come and go, and that there's, you're treating them like human beings. We've had situations where people have been brought over and they've been told, okay, you're going to work Monday to Friday and you're not here on the weekends, and you brought them over from another country. Where are they supposed to go on the weekends, right? So then they themselves soon to become victims of trafficking just simply because they have nowhere to go. So where do they go? They go to shelters. And then traffickers sit outside of shelters and they'll grab them. We had a case.
You mean they kicked them out of the house for the weekend?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, so see, that would fall under a lot of things I probably can't say on the radio, but definitely fall into, the misuse of the actual visa in the first place. I will say this, though. Sometimes, because I mentioned about people coming over as live-in caregivers, and we've had situations, like I said, where they'll come here and vice versa. Like if you were from Canada, want to go teach English somewhere, you need to fully understand who is bringing you into that country. And when you get there, what's going to happen and where, to know more parameters as to what's happening. And so Walk With Me, which is the organization that freethem raises money for and funds, the director, she initially came to Canada 10 to 15 years ago to be a live-in caregiver, come for 3 months. She was 19, 20 years old, wanted to try something new and decided to come to Canada and to do this job. And when she was picked up at Pearson, she was taken straight from Pearson to a strip club. She had her identification confiscated, and she was told that she was to strip, or essentially not. They didn't necessarily say they were going to kill her, I don't believe, but definitely the threats came. And then she saw what they did to the other victims that they had, and so she was forced to strip, to be an escort, to engage in sexual services, the whole bit for 3 months until she was finally able to escape. So she now runs an organization that essentially helps traffic victims. But this was a situation that she came to Canada to be a live-in caregiver, something to fun do for the summer, and was totally trafficked.
Unbelievable. But now we've identified some of the problems. We're going to talk a little bit about the solutions, and one of them is something that you're doing on Saturday, September the 14th. If you could tell us a little bit about that. We've only got about a minute and a half to go. If you could just tell us something about what's called Freedom Walk, I believe.
Awesome. All right. So every year, freethem puts on a Freedom Walk downtown Toronto. And so this year we are at the Fairmont Royal York. It is Saturday, September 14th. We start at 9 o'clock in the morning. We have a number of speakers that come out and speak at the event. So for people to learn more about human trafficking, which is the number one reason or way in how we can fight human trafficking, is really to educate yourself about this, is to come out to the walk and learn and listen more about it. We're going to have various different vendors selling amazing types of jewelry made from people who have been exploited, but profits, again, going to victims of trafficking. And it's a great way to come out, to meet with a whole lot of people, and for us to take down the streets of Toronto and, kind of voice our opinions and stand proud and say, we're not going to stand for human trafficking to continue in Canada. And so it's an amazing event. A lot of media support comes out to it, and every year it's been phenomenal. We were hoping for 700 to 1,000 people to show up this year and hoping to raise $50,000. So anyone who's interested in sponsoring or coming out to the event to walk in the event, it's a 5-kilometer walk. Totally come down. Check us out on freethem.ca for more information.
Fantastic. I'll be there. Thank you very much, Lori. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. We're going to end with a song that you chose. If you could just tell us a little bit about John and this song, which is called Free Them.
All right, so John, I have yet to meet him, so I'm so excited to meet him, but he essentially wrote this amazing song, which I have heard, and essentially it's really just the background about human trafficking and about, I guess, people when they first hear about it and they really just don't fully understand the misconceptions. So it's him kind of talking about what he thought human trafficking was and what it really is. And it's a beautiful song, and it has a lot of great passion. Currently, he is studying at Seneca, and I hope to meet him very soon to learn more about him.
Lori Folkerson, from the Executive Committee and Milton representative of freethem.ca. Thank you so much for joining us, Lori. Very much appreciated. And thanks for informing our audience.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Bye now.
And we'll leave you today with John Somatic and Free Them on the big interview on Beyond the Ballot Box on CFRU 93.3 FM.
Schematic. Yeah. Let's go. Yeah. We gotta free them. I didn't know what to look for until I was shown more. My eyes are open now, I'm afraid to step out the door. Knowing what's out there, I'm hesitant to explore. The world is no longer the fairy tale I'd imagined before. To think the 7-year-olds heading out to war, or laboring on the farm and ripping with the soul. They want freedom, but they have to pay what they owe. Stuck in the vicious loop with the work, but stay poor. There's a gun on his back on her, a sign that screams ho. We assume it's their choice to pick a wrong door. People being sold off like items in the grocery store. For them there is no holy ground, just a hard floor. Broken hearted, kidnapped kids, traffic for the cash flow. A rich man dances a greed and says I want more. To destroy this crime we have to start from the core. Set the children free and let the despair go. Let him go. Yeah. Let him go. Let him go. Yeah. Yeah. We've got to set them free. Oh, we've got to let them live. Yeah. I've learned new things just by flipping new pages. I once thought it was dead, done, had been gone for ages. Now little girls live their lives in the vicious storm. 15, 20 times a day they mourn, but stay strong. Left for death is their song, the forced to act grown. The streets become their home from dusk till dawn. They need the money so they make profits through Jones. To pay their loans to the man that forced them to do wrong. Thought they found love, found their pimp, now life's gone. We look down on them, we see them, we frown. There's always a great picture beyond yourself. Portrait, put yourself in their shoes and set your view straight. It's not always a choice, it's usually the only option. A Jolly Roger circles them and has them for protection. Men go on vacation just to exploit them. Let's do the opposite, do what's right and free them. It's a mad world, let them go. Yeah, let them go. Let them go. Yeah, yeah. We've got to set them free. We've got to let them live. We're the ones that can let them be, let them live, set them free. We gotta free them, we gotta free them, free them. We're the ones that can let them be, let them live, set stop free.